Hi guys, Mrs. Wright. It's time for Read Aloud, Homer P. Figg, Chapter 9. Want to find out what's about to happen here with our friend Homer. It looks like he's probably about to meet Mr. Brewster and find out what that's all about. And hopefully he's not going to get himself caught up in any more trouble with smelt and stink. So we'll see how that goes. So let's see what's going on. The title of this chapter is called Quaker Talk. And a Quaker was, maybe still is, there may be still some Quakers who are very much against violence. They are peaceful people. That's important for you to know as we go into this chapter. All right, here goes. The man who looks like God himself is Jebediah Brewster, owner of the house. He's got a long, flowing white beard, piercing blue eyes, and a booming voice that rattles the china when he bellows. Hello! A voice that freezes my brain and makes it hard to answer simple questions like, what be thy name, son? And where be thy home? Quaker talk. The young scallywag calls himself Homer and says he's from a place called Smelt, says Mrs. Bean, weighing in. The only truthful part is the part The only truthful part of him is the part that he's hungry. Smelt, hey? Very interesting, Mr. Brewster responds in his kindly way. All God's children come from somewhere. The precise location matters not. Thee be welcome in the house, Homer, whoever thee be and whatever has brought thee here. Mr. Brewster sits down at the table, adjusts his black sleeves, and announces that he will have a glass of cold water if Mrs. Bean will be so kind as to oblige. He talks to her, he thanks her, takes the glass of water in both hands and drinks it in 3 long gulps. His big throat moves under his beard, and you can hear the water going down, like it was leaking out of an old hand pump. The finest spring water, he announces, dabbing deliberately at his beard with a linen napkin. That's what drew me to this particular location. Clear, cold spring water steeped in the best minerals. It keeps the gut healthy and purifies the blood. I intended to bottle it as an elixir and sell it by the drop, but in digging out the spring we encountered gemstones, and that became my business, just one of the Lord's many surprises. Mr. Brewster then folds his long fingered hands like he's praying and studies for a while, as if he's looking into my soul as if I've got one and finds it wanting. Makes me fit to fidget being studied like that, but I manage to hold still because both of them are waiting for me to tell a lie, and I can sense that much. Does thee know about gemstones, Homer? Mr. Brewster asks, sweet as can be. Something in me wants to say my third cousin, Curtis McTavish, has been trading gemstones his whole life and recently come into the possession of a world's largest ruby that he got off the widow of Blackbeard the pirate. But that ruby was cursed. Ever since he got the ruby, poor McTavish lives in fear. He's barricaded himself inside his own dungeon and believes that the ruby speaks to him in the ghostly voices of all that has cursed. Course, I don't have a cousin named McTavish, or any cousin I'm aware of, and I clamp my jaw shut until the urge passes. He's gone quiet, Mrs. Bean observes suspiciously. Maybe it was starving that made him talk so much. Mr. Brewster takes a deep breath and nods to himself as if satisfied. Homer Figg, he announced, thee may be an innocent stranger or thee may be a spy sent by those who oppose us. But one thing is clear to me. God has a hand in this, and he would not have us turn away a hungry child. Mrs. Bean smiles at me and shrugs. I get the idea that nothing Mr. Brewster does surprises her. Come along, son, he says, standing up, and thee will be shown the secret of Brewster's mines. The boy needs a bath, Mrs. Bean points out. I doubt he's had a bath this year. Maybe last year, too. Yuck. After he surveys the mine, says Mr. Brewster, clamping his hand on my shoulder, after he sees our amazing mine, thee can scrub him till he bleeds. I'm hoping that that's just more Quaker talk, but Mrs. Bean has a soapy gleam in her eye. Before I have time to make plans for escape, Mr. Brewster is marching me out the door and into the long grass, We're going uphill, away from the big house, away from the warm kitchen. And the sky is so thin and cool and blue, it makes me feel a little out of breath somehow. Pretty soon we come to a path, worn into ruts by wagon wheels, and then to a set of rusty iron rails hammered into the hillside. We follow the rails. From around the bend comes the gentle murmur of flowing water, but the sound must be tricky in these hills because I never do see the water. All the while, Mr. Brewster's big voice never stops booming, and it comes to me that he couldn't keep a secret even if it killed him, because secrets are related to lies, and I doubt Mr. Brewster ever lied in his entire life, which reminds me of my brother Harold, who's probably halfway to the war by now, and worrying about that makes it hard to concentrate on all things Mr. Brewster is saying about the gemstone and the mines and why God has put us on earth and how he tests us. So I searched for healing water, and instead I found a rainbow, he says. Not a pot of gold exactly, but a vast deposit of turtlemine, which comes in all of the colors of the rainbow. Turtlemine. Sounds like a pirate name to me. Must be I've got pirates on the brain for some reason. But Mr. Brewster explains that turtlemine is a gemstone used in costume jewelry. When polished, it shines like diamonds or rubies or emeralds, depending on how it's cut. Turtlemine brought me great wealth, he said. It did not bring me wisdom or show me the path. It was God who provided wisdom, and Frederick Douglass who showed me the path. Before he can explain, we come upon the mine itself. I've been expecting a proper tunnel cut into the side of the mountain, like I've seen in the storybooks, but Mr. Brewster's mine is more like a big pit in the ground. We're looking down on some rusty tin roofs and a bunch of rickety-looking shacks where the miners work, prying hunks of rock from the ground and cutting out the raw gemstones, except there's no mine working. There's no one at all. Mr. Brewster guides me down a narrow little path into an empty pit. This is the secret of Brewster's Mines, he announces quite happily. We ceased production 2 years ago when the war started. But why is that a secret? I asked. Because the mine remains active, he said mysteriously. It is convenient if the world assumes that the activity is related to mining. Folks think we provide lead and copper to the Union Army. That is not true, and I pray for forgiveness for letting it stand without correction, because my untruthfulness is in the service of a greater good. For once in my life, I keep my mouth shut and wait for him to tell me whatever it is he wants to say. I assume he's going to confess there are fugitive slaves hidden in the mine somewhere, like Smelt said, but I'm not supposed to know that, so I got to be ready to act surprised when it comes out. Only it don't come out. Exactly. Mr. Brewster drapes his long arm over my shoulder and holds on, like he expects me to bolt any second. He lowers his big voice and to a ragged whisper. Ebenezer Smelt is well known in these parts, he confides. Mr. Smelt is often found in the company of William Mullins, better known as Stink. I mention this because thee told Mrs. Bean thee hailed from a place called Smelt. To my knowledge, no such place exists, so I must assume thee are in the league with the murderous Mr. Smelt and his evil associate. I started out keeping my mouth shut on purpose, but Jebediah Brewster has knocked the words right out of me. He's on to him. He knows what's going on. All he had to do is say Smelt, and Jebediah Brewster knew that there was something going on. So, think about what might be happening and think about what's going to happen next and what's the fate of poor Homer Figg. So, have a great night or day. It's night right now. I bet you didn't know that. It's the day before. So, anyway, have a wonderful day, morning, afternoon, whenever you're watching this, and I will be back at it tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye.